Welcome to the Global WarWatch Network and a brand new deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise, take that stack of information, and really pull out the key nuggets of knowledge, basically to help you stay well-informed quickly and thoroughly. Today, we are diving deep into the, constantly shifting landscape of the war in Ukraine. We've gathered a really rich set of sources for you. It covers everything from reports on future arms trafficking.
Which is a huge concern.
Absolutely. And the global arms trade dynamics, plus some deep analysis of military performance and, the evolving political chess game surrounding it all. So our mission today, give you a clear, concise understanding of the latest developments, the underlying dynamics, and maybe most importantly, what it all might mean for the future, both for the conflict and, beyond.
Indeed. And the layers of complexity are significant. You've got the brutal realities on the ground, then there's the high-stakes diplomatic maneuvering, and fascinatingly, these ripple effects across global illicit markets. It's quite a picture.
Okay, let's unpack this then, because the shifts in the U.S. approach particularly have been, nothing short of dramatic lately. It really feels like we've seen almost a complete reversal in rhetoric, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. If you think back just to the start of the year, we saw President Trump talking about wanting an immediate end to the war, often using, quite conciliatory language towards President Putin.
Right.
But at the same time, his words for Ukrainian President Zelensky were quite severe. The sources we looked at even recount him calling Zelensky a dictator without elections on Truth Social back in February 2025.
Wow.
And accusing him of gambling with World War III during apparently a very tense Oval Office meeting that actually led to a temporary pause in military aid, remember?
I do. That initial stance really seemed to signal a big pivot, maybe away from direct confrontation, but then something fundamentally changed. By April, the tone, it shifted quite noticeably, became much more critical, aimed squarely at Putin with calls to stop the bombing, and you could sense the frustration over no peace deal. And then sort of a gradual softening towards Zelensky. What do you think triggered such a dramatic turn?
Well, if you connect it to the broader context, the fighting itself, this shift really seemed to intensify after Russia stepped up its aerial attacks.
Ah, okay.
By May, Trump's language towards Putin got much sharper, calling his actions absolutely crazy. Why? And by July, that frustration had deepened. He was saying things like, Putin talks beautifully and then bombs people at night.
Right. That's quite a statement.
It is. And he even revealed feeling like a lot of bull thrown at us by Putin. So this frustration, seemingly tied to that escalation in Russian aggression, it all culminated in that dramatic reversal we saw, the announcement of renewed massive weapons support for Ukraine.
But with a twist, right? That new threat.
Exactly. It came with this bold new threat, imposing very severe tariffs. Specifically, 100% secondary tariffs on countries buying Russian oil if a peace deal isn't reached within 50 days.
That's a really bold move, especially, like you said, considering the U.S. has already poured about $350 billion into this war. So for you listening, you have to wonder, what do these policy swings, that huge financial commitment, plus this new tariff threat, what does it all signal for the conflict's future? It feels like a strong, maybe even a final push for some kind of resolution. But while the leaders are grappling with these big strategic shifts, the grim reality on the ground just keeps getting worse. June 2025, the sources say, saw the highest monthly civilian casualties in Ukraine in over 3 years.
Yeah, the numbers are stark. 232 people killed, 1,343 injured just in June. It's a terrible reminder of the human cost.
Absolutely tragic.
And the surge in civilian suffering is directly linked to Russia's massively expanded air offensive. That really kicked off late 2024. The data is just, stark, like you said. The number of drones and missiles launched in June was 10 times higher than the year before.
10 times. That's incredible.
It is. And analysts are warning Russia might soon be able to conduct regular bombing raids using over 1,000 drones at a time. This isn't just, more bombs. It represents a significant strategic capability shift.
1,000 drones. That's a staggering increase. It really begs the question, how? How has Russia managed to scale this up so much, and what does this mean long term?
Well, they've made huge progress in domestic drone production since 2023. Our sources indicate they reportedly got hold of the Shahed drone blueprints from Iran
Oh.
and quickly set up their own production lines. What's really striking is how comprehensive they've been. They've apparently even imported laborers from various Asian and African countries to staff these factories.
Really?
And they're sourcing key components from China.
Yeah.
So the result isn't just more drones. These new ones are faster, they fly higher, they have video cameras. And some, worryingly, even use AI for autonomous flight and target selection, carrying much bigger warheads.
AI-enabled autonomous drones, it's just terrifying. Adds a whole other chilling layer. But why this relentless focus on bombing from the air, especially hitting cities so far from the front lines? What's the strategic thinking there?
That's a critical question, isn't it? Why terrorize civilians like this? Ukrainian officials seem to believe the main goal is to break the nation's will to resist, particularly because Russia's ground forces are, well, still struggling.
Right.
Despite enormous losses, the reports mentioned over 100,000 soldiers just in the first half of 2025. Their ground troops gained less than 1% of new territory in that same time.
Less than 1%.
Yeah, so the geographical spread of the targets, hitting cities like Lutsk and Chernivtsi in the west, which were previously untouched, it really seems to reinforce this idea. Demoralize the entire population, try to win psychologically where they can't win decisively on the battlefield.
A grim strategy. And this escalation, especially the air war, it naturally leads us to the global response in this complex world of arms trade. President Trump's announcement, billions in top U.S. weapons for Ukraine. That's huge news. But the catch, as you mentioned, is how it's being paid for, or rather not directly by the U.S.
Exactly. It's a really innovative, maybe complex mechanism being proposed.
Mm-hmm.
NATO allies reportedly will send their existing weapons to Ukraine first.
Okay.
And then this is the key part. They'll order new upgraded weapons from the U.S. to replenish their own stocks.
Ah, I see. So it achieves multiple things.
Precisely. Ukraine gets vital systems like Patriot missiles quickly. The U.S. boosts its own defense industry and potentially upgrades allied capabilities.
Yeah.
And politically, European countries end up indirectly footing more of the bill for rearmament.
That's clever.
And NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte apparently indicated this decision came right after a big Russian airstrike, suggesting it was a direct, unified response to Putin, a kind of recalibration of burden sharing.
Interesting. But beyond these official channels, there's that darker side we touched on, arms trafficking. Our sources really highlight a major concern here that this war could totally reshape illicit arms markets.
Yeah.
With criminal groups apparently already setting up more organized routes, supply chains, on a scale bigger than after the Balkans or Afghanistan. What makes this conflict so different, so potentially dangerous for illicit trade?
Well, it raises the big question. How do you even begin to mitigate these risks? They seem so pervasive. The Global Initiative Conference identified some key ideas.
Yeah.
One is basically plan for uncertainty, use flexible policies because these markets change fast.
Right.
Another is learn from the past, sure, but recognize the new threats like converted blank guns, reactivated firearms, even 3D printed guns. They add a whole new dimension.
3D printing burns.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. It underlines that old saying, crime has time, and it moves incredibly quickly. And the trade isn't just one thing. You've got small-scale stuff, handguns, explosives maybe for European organized crime, then potentially larger volumes of heavier weapons, assault rifles, RPGs possibly flowing to Africa, Latin America, the Middle East. It's a diverse, adaptive threat.
And who are the players in this shattering market? Is it the usual suspects, the traditional crime groups, or are we seeing new actors emerge?
Traditional organized crime is definitely involved, no doubt. But there's a concerning new class of brokers apparently emerging. Ex-military personnel, using their old contacts and knowledge of how these supply chains work.
That makes sense, unfortunately.
And Turkey is specifically flagged as a potential key hub because of existing crime networks there and its, logistical position.
Right. Its location is critical.
And we absolutely cannot ignore the Russian dimension. The very real risk of weapons flowing out of Russia or through areas it controls and into Europe via a back door adds another layer of complexity.
It's such a tangled web, officially and unofficially. And on the official side, while lots of European nations, Germany, Finland, Canada, seem ready to help rearm Ukraine, there's also dissent, isn't there? Hungary, for instance.
Yes, that's a notable point. Hungary, a NATO member, has firmly refused to support or fund these U.S. weapons deliveries, emphasizing very clearly that no Hungarian money, weapons, or soldiers will go to Ukraine. It really highlights the internal strains, even within alliances like NATO.
Okay, let's shift focus now to Ukraine's forces themselves. We hear a lot about their motivation, high recruitment levels, but they face huge ongoing challenges, right? Especially with personnel and equipment.
They really do. Casualties and desertions are reportedly high. And critically, the average age of a Ukrainian soldier is now around 40.
40. That's quite high for frontline troops.
It is. And sources mention some new recruits facing health issues or even substance abuse problems. It definitely impacts operational capability.
So how are they trying to cope with that?
It's creating immense pressure. To address it, um, Ukraine passed that law back in April 2024, allowing some prisoners to serve for reduced sentences.
Right, that was quite a controversial move.
A significant, maybe desperate measure. And then in February 2025, they launched a new program targeting 18 to 24-year-old volunteers, offering incentives like higher pay, exemptions from later mobilization. Apparently, it saw high initial signups.
That's positive, at least.
It is. But interestingly, they're also reportedly suspending the creation of new brigades, instead focusing on reinforcing existing ones because of, well, widespread poor performance issues. It suggests a focus on consolidation, maybe driven by necessity, not expansion.
Okay, so given those personnel issues and the way the war is evolving, what are their most critical equipment needs right now? What stands out?
Well, their reliance on the West for artillery systems and, crucially, ammunition is almost total now. They've pretty much used up their old Soviet-era stocks. Yeah. And while they show amazing tactical flexibility, they're constantly facing Russia's sheer quantitative advantage in hardware. What they urgently need, maybe above all else right now, is protected mobility. Vehicles to move troops safely under fire.
Especially with all the drones and air attacks?
Exactly. That's crucial. Plus tanks, tactical fire support, and all the enabling capabilities, logistics, breaching gear, electronic warfare, counter-drone systems, secure comms. These aren't just nice-to-haves. They are absolutely essential needs just to hold the line, let alone think about advancing.
And this deep dive into Ukraine's needs, the aid flow, it also shines a light on a bigger trend, doesn't it? In the global arms trade overall.
Oh, absolutely. The conflict has profoundly reshaped the whole global arms landscape. Ukraine, maybe unsurprisingly, has become the world's largest importer of major arms between 2020 and 2024.
The largest, wow.
Imports increased nearly 100-fold compared to the previous period. On the flip side, the U.S. has further cemented its dominance as the top global arms exporter, now accounting for 43% of global arms exports. And significantly, Europe is now its biggest customer.
Interesting shift.
And what's also really noteworthy is Russia's sharp decline. Its arms exports have plummeted down 64%, partly due to the war demanding its own production, partly sanctions, and partly concerted pressure from the U.S. and allies on Russia's former big buyers.
Like India and China.
Exactly. Countries like India and China are increasingly looking elsewhere, or very significantly, developing their own domestic arms industries much faster. It really suggests a longer-term reordering of military power and influence happening globally.
So quite a journey we've taken. We've navigated the complex web of shifting political dynamics, the tragic realities on the ground for civilians, the intricate, often shadowy world of arms trafficking, and these really significant shifts in the global arms trade. It's a snapshot of a conflict just constantly in motion.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this all raises, I think, a crucial question for you listening to consider. Given these rapid innovations we discussed in illicit arms, things like 3D printed guns, reactivated firearms, and this shifting global geopolitical landscape, how might these new kinds of weapons and these changing sources of supply fundamentally reshape future conflicts and illicit markets beyond just Ukraine? It's a ripple effect that can be felt for decades, well after this particular war ends.
That's a really powerful thought to end on. We would genuinely love to hear what stood out to you from this deep dive. What insights did you gain? Let us know, share your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you found this deep dive valuable, please do consider liking it, sharing it with someone who might benefit, and definitely subscribe to the Global WarWatch Network for more in-depth analysis like this one.